Please listen to the whole story and comment if you like, then kindly share it and subscribe me. This story is about my friends and me, a group of 5, on a road trip through Death Valley, California. We stumble upon an abandoned shack, unearthing a dark secret and awakening sinister forces. As the desert sun sets, we escape with our lives, forever marked by our encounter, but at what cost? The price of silence hangs heavy, a chilling reminder that some paths are best left untraveled. The California sun beat down mercilessly as our beat-up minivan, affectionately nicknamed the Rust Bucket, rumbled across the desolate expanse of Death Valley. Sarah, the ever-optimistic one, blasted classic rock from the speakers, trying to drown out the oppressive silence of the desert. There was me, the cautious planner, Liam, the resident jokester, Maya, the adventurous one, and Ben, always quiet but observant. We were 5 American friends, on a self-proclaimed, adrenaline-fueled adventure, through the most haunted valley in America. Little did we know, the stories whispered about Death Valley weren't just tall tales. We were about to become unwilling participants in a nightmare far scarier than any campfire legend. The first sign of trouble came in the form of a flat tire. Miles from any town, the sinking feeling in our stomachs mirrored the deflating tire. Liam, however, remained upbeat, cracking jokes about using the tire as a sunshade. While he changed it, the rest of us explored the immediate vicinity, drawn to an abandoned shack nestled amidst the bleached white bones of forgotten plants. Inside, the air hung heavy with dust and the lingering scent of something decaying. Cobwebs draped the windows like macabre curtains, and the floor was littered with rusted tools and broken toys. A chill, despite the stifling heat, sent shivers down my spine. Suddenly, Maya, who had wandered deeper into the shack, screamed. We rushed in to find her staring at a wall covered in faded photos and bizarre symbols. One photo, in particular, caught our eye. A group of people, dressed in tattered clothes and wild grins, stood around a crude wooden altar. In their hands, objects glinted in the dim light. As we stared, a gust of wind swept through the shack, sending a photo fluttering to the floor. It was a close-up of one of the people, his eyes burning with an unnatural intensity, and a single word scrawled beneath, offering. Fear prickled at the edges of our bravado. Just then, we heard the unmistakable rumble of an approaching engine. Hope surged through us, maybe help was finally coming. We ran out of the shack, waving our arms frantically, only to come face to face with a beat-up pickup truck, its occupants anything but friendly. 3 figures stared back, their faces obscured by the shadows cast by wide-brimmed hats. They emerged from the truck, their silence more ominous than any greeting. Their clothes hung loosely on their gaunt frames, and their eyes, the same unsettling shade of yellow as the setting sun, held us captive in their gaze. Without a word, they advanced, their movements predatory. Adrenaline coursed through us, and we scattered. Liam, quick on his feet, sprinted towards the Rust Bucket, fumbling with the keys. Sarah, never one to back down, grabbed a rusted pipe lying on the ground, her face etched with fierce determination. Maya, her usual adventurous spirit replaced by pure terror, followed me as we desperately searched for an escape route. Ben, however, stood frozen, his eyes locked on the approaching figures. He didn't run. He didn't fight. He just stared, a low moan escaping his lips. The figures halted, their gaze shifting to him. They exchanged a look, a silent communication passing between them. Then, in a moment that seemed to stretch into eternity, they turned their backs on us and grabbed Ben, dragging him towards the truck. We screamed, our voices swallowed by the vastness of the desert. Ben's muffled cries were cut short as they threw him into the back of the truck and sped away, leaving us stranded in the heart of Death Valley, with the chilling image of their manic smiles etched into our minds. The sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in fiery hues of orange and red, mirroring the burning terror in our hearts. We huddled together, the silence punctuated only by our ragged breaths and the gnawing fear. We were lost, alone, and haunted by what we had witnessed. What fate awaited Ben? What horrors lay hidden within the shadows of Death Valley? These questions, unanswered and chilling, hung heavy in the air as the night descended, leaving us to face the unknown. We clung to each other through the long night, the desert wind howling like a chorus of lost souls. Exhausted and traumatized, we huddled in the rust bucket, our eyes darting towards every flicker of movement in the darkness. Sleep offered no solace, only nightmares filled with the faces of the figures and Ben's anguished cry. When dawn finally touched the horizon, casting an eerie orange glow across the desolate landscape, we knew we couldn't stay. We had to reach civilization, to report what happened, even if nobody believed our wild story. Sarah, her bravado masking a deep tremor, insisted we head south, following an old, barely visible track mentioned in a travel guide. The journey was agonizingly slow. The rust bucket sputtered and coughed, its engine protesting the harsh terrain. The sun beat down mercilessly, sapping our remaining strength. We rationed the little water we had left, each swallow a precious drop of hope. After what felt like an eternity, a glimmer emerged in the distance, a ramshackle building, the faint sign saying, "Dusty Oasis Saloon." Relief flooded through us, a fragile balloon of optimism against the vast canvas of fear. Weaving through abandoned mining equipment and skeletal trees, we finally reached the saloon. The door creaked open with a groan, revealing a dusty interior dimly lit by a single flickering oil lamp. A lone figure sat hunched over a weathered counter, his back to us. "Hello?" Sarah's voice echoed, thin and hesitant. The figure slowly turned, revealing a leathery face etched with age and lines deeper than the canyon surrounding us. His eyes, the same unsettling yellow as the figures from the shack, held us captive in their gaze. A chilling smile spread across his face, revealing a gap where a tooth should be. "Lost, are you?" he rasped, his voice like dry leaves rustling in the wind. Come in, come in. We all get lost here sometimes. Maybe I can help you find your way." The saloon door creaked shut behind us, plunging us into a suffocating darkness. The single oil lamp sputtered and died, leaving us only with the sound of our own ragged breaths and the unsettling feeling of eyes watching from the shadows. We exchanged mortified glances, the blood draining from our faces. The man's words resonated in the dead silence of the bar, dripping with ambiguity. His yellow eyes, like burning embers in the gloom, seemed to pierce through our very souls, searching for something hidden within. Sarah, ever the voice of reason, cautiously approached the counter. "We need to use your phone," she said, her voice barely a whisper. "Our friend was taken, and we need to call for help." The man chuckled, a low, guttural sound that sent shivers down our spines. "Help? Out here in the desert, help is a scarce commodity. You see, folks come and go, but the desert always stays." He leaned closer, his rancid breath a foul assault on our senses. "Tell me," he rasped, "what were you doing before you stumbled upon my humble establishment?" We exchanged panicked looks. Should we tell him about the abandoned shack, the photos, and the terrifying encounter with the figures? Would it put us in further danger, or was honesty our only chance? Liam, ever the impulsive one, blurted out, "We were exploring, just like any tourist. Looking for some thrills, you know." The man's smile widened, revealing a chilling glint of gold amongst his stained teeth. "Exploration, eh? That's a dangerous game to play in these parts. Especially when you stumble upon things you ain't meant to see." His voice turned cold, his eyes narrowing. "Tell me about the shack." We hesitated, our hearts pounding in our chests. Was this some elaborate test, or were we being judged for our curiosity? Maya, barely audible, started to recount the story, her voice trembling as she described the photos and the strange symbols. As she spoke, a figure emerged from the shadows at the back of the saloon. Tall and gaunt, with eyes that glinted unnervingly in the darkness, it moved with an unnatural grace. In its hands, it clutched a rusted metal cage, and within it, a familiar form huddled, whimpering softly. "Ben." Our collective gasp resonated like a gunshot in the silence. Ben's eyes, wide with fear and confusion, met ours. The man with the yellow eyes let out a long, chilling laugh. "Seems you brought an offering after all," he cackled, his voice echoing in the cramped space. terror froze us in place. We were trapped, caught in the web of this sinister man and his silent companion. What fate awaited us? What dark purpose did their arrival serve? Who were they, and what did they want? As the man with the yellow eyes approached, his face twisted in a macabre grin, the oil lamp sputtered and died, plunging the saloon into an inky blackness. We were left in the suffocating dark, the only sound our ragged breaths and the chilling laughter that echoed around us, leaving the answer to our questions hanging in the terrifying silence. Panic clawed at my throat as the darkness swallowed us whole. I stumbled back, colliding with Liam, both of us reaching out blindly in the suffocating blackness. Sarah's voice, laced with fear and desperation, echoed in the cavernous space. "Ben? Can you hear us?" Silence. Only the raspy breaths of Maya and Liam punctuated the oppressive quiet. My heart hammered against my ribs, each beat a frantic drum against the silence. Then, a faint glow flickered in the distance. A single match, struck and held aloft by the figure holding the cage, Ben's silhouette, etched against the flickering flame, was gaunt and shaking. The man with the yellow eyes chuckled, a sound like dried leaves rustling in a desert wind. "Curious, aren't you?" he rasped, his voice seemingly closer than before. "Curious about what happens to those who trespass in forbidden places?" The match flared, casting long, macabre shadows on the walls. The man's companion, the tall figure with the cage, remained shrouded in darkness, its face obscured. My throat tightened, and a primal fear gripped me. We were not just lost anymore, we were prey, caught in a twisted game orchestrated by these unnerving figures. Suddenly, the man with the yellow eyes threw the burning match on the floor. The room plunged into darkness once more, the only sound his chilling laughter echoing in the vast emptiness. Then, a whisper, barely audible, broke the silence. "Run," it was Ben. His voice, weak and raspy, seemed to come from everywhere at once. Panic surged through me, overriding the suffocating fear. We had to obey, to use this fleeting opportunity. Grasping blindly for each other, we stumbled towards the sound of Ben's faint voice. The man's laughter had ceased, replaced by a low growl that sent shivers down my spine. We collided with tables and chairs, the sounds of our panicked movements amplifying the oppressive silence. Just as my hand brushed against the rough surface of the bar, a pair of cold, bony hands clamped onto my arm. I screamed, the sound lost in the chaos. A struggle ensued, a desperate fight against unseen forces. Then, with a sickening crack, the grip on my arm loosened. I stumbled forward, blindly grasping at anything. My hand found a handle, the cold metal a stark contrast to the clammy sweat on my palm. Pulling with all my might, a door creaked open, revealing a sliver of pale moonlight. Without a second thought, I shoved through the opening, tumbling out into the cold night air. I landed on the dusty ground, scraping my knee, but the pain was negligible compared to the terror gnawing at me. Glancing back, I saw Liam and Maya emerge, their faces etched with fear. We ran. We ran without direction, without thought, driven only by the primal instinct to survive. The wind howled in our ears, the only sound besides the frantic pounding of our hearts. We didn't look back, the chilling laughter echoing faintly in the distance. As the first rays of dawn painted the sky in hues of orange and pink, we stumbled into a clearing. A lone, weathered gas station stood sentinel in the desolate landscape, the pump swaying gently in the morning breeze. A sign hung above the station, its paint peeling and faded, "Welcome to desolation. Last stop for miles." Below it, in smaller, barely visible letters, another inscription, "Some paths lead you further into the desert than you ever intended." We stood there, gasping for breath, our bodies bruised and battered, our spirits broken. We had escaped. We were hollowed shells, shadows of our former selves, stumbling into the gas station like wounded animals seeking refuge. The air inside was stale, the shelves bare except for a few dusty bottles of soda and packages of stale crackers. Behind the counter, an old man with eyes like tarnished silver watched us approach, his silence as unnerving as the laughter that still haunted our nightmares. "Lost, are you?" he rasped, his voice sandpaper against our raw nerves. We exchanged nervous glances, but Sarah, ever the voice of reason, stepped forward. "Lost, are you?" he rasped, his voice sandpaper against our raw nerves. We exchanged nervous glances, but Sarah, ever the voice of reason, stepped forward. "We need help," she croaked, her voice raspy. We were attacked. People took our friend. The old man's gaze flickered to something behind us, a flicker of movement in the distorted reflection of a dusty mirror hanging on the wall. A bead of sweat trickled down my temple. His silence was deafening. "They call themselves the Wardens," he finally whispered, his voice barely audible. "They guard these lands, protecting secrets as ancient as the desert itself." Maya, her voice barely a whimper, asked, "Will we ever see Ben again?" The old man's gaze met hers, a flicker of pity dancing in his tired eyes. "Some things are lost forever in the jaws of the desert," he murmured, his words hanging heavy in the air. "But sometimes..." He trailed off, his gaze drifting back to the mirror. Our blood ran cold. In the reflection, the faint outline of a figure stood in the doorway, shrouded in shadow. Its eyes, two burning embers, locked onto ours through the distorted glass. "They make deals," the old man continued, his voice low and urgent. "But the price is always steep." A cold, skeletal hand reached out from the doorway, its bony fingers tapping on the glass. The figure in the mirror stepped forward, its yellow eyes gleaming with an unnatural hunger. We backed away, pressing ourselves against the counter, trapped between the horrors behind and the unknown before us. The old man held out a weathered coin, its surface etched with symbols we didn't recognize. "This may give you time," he rasped, his voice barely a whisper. "But remember, the desert takes, and it rarely gives back." As we stared at the coin, its surface shimmering with an otherworldly light, the figure in the mirror leaned closer, its face contorted into a grotesque grin. A low growl, like the wind whipping through a graveyard, echoed in the room. We had a choice to make. Embrace the unknown, the possibly impossible, or face the horrors that awaited us outside. The weight of the coin in Sarah's hand felt heavier than the desert itself, the price of survival hanging in the balance. In that suffocating silence, bathed in the chilling glow of the old man's eyes, we did not know what choice we would make. All we knew was that the desert, with its secrets and its horrors, had a way of changing you forever, and the path ahead was shrouded in a terrifying uncertainty. Sarah held the coin in her trembling hand, its weight a tangible representation of the impossible choice before them. The figure in the mirror pressed its face closer, its yellow eyes burning with an insatiable hunger, the growl escalating into a cacophony of inhuman screeches. Suddenly, a loud bang echoed outside, followed by a cacophony of sirens and flashing lights. The figure in the mirror recoiled, its growl cut short. We watched in disbelief as a police car screeched to a halt in front of the gas station. Two figures emerged, a stern-faced sheriff and a young officer, both heavily armed. The sheriff, seeing our state of distress and the haunting figure in the window, drew his gun. "What's going on here?" he barked, his voice resonating with authority. The question hung heavy in the air. We looked at each other, the horrors we had witnessed replaying behind our eyes. Could we explain their existence without sounding like deranged travelers? Before we could speak, the old man stepped forward, his voice surprisingly firm. "They were lost," he said, his gaze flickering between us and the sheriff. "Found themselves in a bit of trouble, but they're headed out now." The sheriff narrowed his eyes, suspicion evident in his gaze. He scanned the room, his attention lingering on the mirror and the unsettling emptiness beyond the doorway. The figure had vanished, leaving only a chilling silence. Just as it seemed the situation might escalate, the younger officer approached us, his voice softer than the sheriff's. "We received a call," he said, his gaze flickering to the coin in Sarah's hand. "Someone reported seeing a group matching your description lost in the wilderness. We came as soon as we could." Relief washed over us in a tidal wave. The sheriff relaxed his stance, holstering his gun. "Well, you certainly picked an interesting place to get lost," he said, a hint of amusement in his voice. "Just stay on the main roads, folks. This desert can be unforgiving." We nodded, overwhelmed with gratitude. Taking one last glance at the weathered gas station, the mirror now innocuous, and the old man, who simply nodded a silent farewell. We climbed into the police car. As we drove away, the desert stretched out before us, vast and imposing, yet strangely calming. We had faced unimaginable horrors, danced with the edge of oblivion, and emerged, forever changed, but alive. The coin Sarah clutched in her hand felt warm against her skin, a constant reminder of the price of survival, not paid in blood, but in a pact of silence. We wouldn't speak of the wardens, the gas station, or the horrors we had witnessed. The desert had its secrets, and they wouldn't be shared. As the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in fiery hues, we knew this wasn't the end of the story. It was a turning point, a whisper of the unknown forever etched in our souls. We were leaving the desert, but a part of us would forever be bound to its unsettling silence, a chilling reminder that the path less traveled sometimes leads to places we didn't know existed, and the monsters we encounter might not always be the ones we expect.